live stream live. I am your host, Joshua Schubart, and I hope you are having a beautiful Monday, New York evening, or wherever you are in this crazy world. So I have a very special guest this evening. I'm Mr. Michael Cerveris, as I and other people call him, the King of Broadway, but he's also done tons of TV and film, and I was lucky enough to work with him on The Tick. But before we start with all of that, we're going to do my usual what I'm feeling, what I've been watching, and what I've been reading. So as usual, I'm feeling a little fucking crazy because of the state of the country. Right now, it seems, I say this every week, but every day there's a new like fresh fucking hell coming out of the news cycle or out of the White House or shit like that. And right now it's like ultra tariffs. Just some of the craziest shit I've ever laid eyes on. Specifically right now with China, who look like they're just going to try to like economically destroy us by making counterfeit versions of all of our IP and putting it on the market for a fraction of the price. So that should be fun. Let's see, let's see how that pans out. I'm not an economist, but I am a person who reads a lot of stuff. And you know, like I kind of said in a previous post and a bit last week, I still am in an optimistic state. Did you see all the people that came out to protest on the 5th? That was wildly amazing. The police didn't even show up in New York. I don't know why. Nobody was gonna like blow them up or anything, but the protesters handled their own traffic movements and all that stuff just fine. So, yeah, who needs them, right? Who needs them? But I am heartened by the outpouring of outrage and people asking for a change and things of that nature. So we'll see if how that goes and if that is enough. And hopefully it is. Cory Booker breaking the filibuster record last week was also particularly heartening, even if he wasn't actually using it to block anything. He made a very wonderful speech for 25 hours. And I don't know, it just made me feel like things were starting to move forward. And maybe that's the point, and maybe nothing is moving forward, but hey, it made me feel nice. So there we go. So let's see, what am I watching? So, well, I don't know if anyone else is watching the WWE and the Road to WrestleMania, but it is getting particularly crazy and fun, just as you would expect with the giant violent soap opera that is professional wrestling that I've been a fan of for most of my life. And this one's looking particularly fun. So excited for it. I'm excited to see what happens between Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns and CM Punk. I don't know if anyone else is amped about that. I am still trying to get through Foundation. It's very good. It's not that I don't want to watch it all the time. I just have 2 children, so my time is very limited. But I watch as much as I can, and it is very good. It is still very scattered and all over the place, but it's beginning to come together just because it is such a epic scale and epic scope. A cool thing that I got to do was that I got invited to this this epic event for Severance in New Jersey at Lumen. I had the opportunity to go to the actual set and the location, and it was basically just a massive Severance fun time where there was food and drinks and music and talk back with the cast, and they had a like improvised theater going on with the cast and the goats and stuff, and it was just a really incredible time hearing basically like how it's all done and how it was all made, and how there's still a lot of mystery. It's one of my favorite shows, so it was a really cool thing that I was able to, um, go and be around other people that really wanted to um, go and like understand it. And that's one of the cool things about being in the television academy. You not only get to pick who wins Emmys, but you also get to be around other people in the industry that are just as nerdy as you are about the industry. Uh, so yeah, it's nice. I like it. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for being here. Oh, so as usual, we are on 4 platforms at the same time. We are on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. I will be answering questions or fielding comments live, either towards me or towards Michael, as long as they are appropriate and not like hypersexual in nature or overly weird. We will have a wonderful time. Yeah, and then what am I reading? So I finally finished um, Peace Talks, which is the book in the Dresden Files that I've been reading, and it's fucking awesome, and I can't wait to read the next book. There's like 25 of them. I've been reading them since I was in high school, but basically it's an if you don't know what the Dresden Files are, they are by an author named Jim Butcher, and it's basically like a wizard private investigator who gets into all sorts of trouble and romance. It's really fun and it's lighthearted but can get very serious. And it's just epic enough. Like it's set in Chicago, and there's all this cool like underground supernatural stuff, and there's a lot of factions. And what's great is that there's so many books and like it's extremely what am I saying? It's extremely serialized, but each book is about a new story, and other characters come in from the other books, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. All right. So, without further ado, I am going to bring on Michael. So, you have probably seen Mr. Cerveris on TV shows like um, um, The Gilded Age and The Tick. And I my mind is going blank, so I good thing I have it here. Jesus, Joshua Schubart. He was he was in Prodigal Son, Mindhunter, which God that got canceled, and I heard rumors that that it might be coming back, but I don't know, probably not. But I'll ask Michael anyway. And then he was in Gotham playing Professor Pig, which I thought was like just so fucking awesome. Um, and then and where I first became aware of Michael was on a TV show called Fringe. Um, and his character was one of my favorite characters I've ever seen on TV. And then I started to see him on stage in New York City when I was going through acting school, um, and I always wanted to work with people like him, and I got the opportunity to on the Tick, and it's not a secret. I kept my cool the whole time when we were shooting, and then when we were done, we went out and we got some beers and some shit, and I just was like, "Oh my god, I love you," and I would totally embarrass myself. But he still likes me, so it's all good. So without further ado, here is Michael Cerveris. Hey man,
Hey,
how
I
are you?
like that you wanted to work with people like me, but maybe not me
No,
exactly. Just
because I was like, he just has like this amazing voice, and it scares me. So like him, just like him. No, but I mean, people like you, man. Like just people that I considered at the time really legendary. I mean, like you are. You have been in, you were in Tommy, you were in Assassins, you were in Hedwig and the Angry Inch in friggin' London. Like you've been in all of these incredible. You were in Sweeney Todd, as Sweeney Todd. Um, and Fun Home. Holy shit. Well, yeah, watching you in that was really special. And then I got to just like pretend I didn't know you when I met you for the first time. But,
well,
but
see, that's how good an actor you are.
oh yeah, I was like, oh, who's this? Whatever. No, it's but you're just like a really awesome and down to earth person.
Oh,
And uh and not that that's shocking, but it can be a bit when you meet a person at your stage in your career that has all that shit under his belt. I've worked with people before who weren't as kind and understanding as
Yeah,
you.
I certainly know that phenomenon. Although it always kind of baffles me, that because given the number of opportunities that you have to be humbled in this
Yeah,
business on your way up, it's kind of remarkable to me that people get to a certain point and forget everything they probably learned along the way. But
I I
that's
mean, you calm me down a lot, because I was getting yelled at by the director like nonstop, in our first large scene together, and it was also my first like big thing ever,
yeah.
um,
Well,
and it yeah,
I
and
remember you mentioning that, and I just kind of immediately felt like, all right, I have to try to like help, uh, diffuse this situation for you,
yeah,
because it doesn't help. Certainly doesn't help you, and it doesn't actually help anybody else for you to be feeling that way. I
yeah,
mean, there's no reason for you to feel like you're going to feel your first day on a set. I mean, I feel this every time I step on a set, no matter how many times I've done it. I feel like this is the time that they're going to figure out that they made a terrible mistake, and
imposter syndrome, yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Um, and so, I don't know. I don't kind of get it when people don't recognize what people around them are going through, and sort of, if they have the chance to, kind of reach out to help somebody who's dealing with that, because I mean, it all feels very close to me. No matter how long I've been doing it, it feels like, it was just yesterday I was walking on a set for the first time. So
Well, what you actually said was very like it wasn't anything crazy, and it was very quiet. You just kind of like looked at me, and I was kind of like in my own head, and you just said, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Don't worry about it. Just keep having fun." And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's all it took. And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." And then I was able to just kind of let it roll off of me,
good.
because I realized later that she wasn't just yelling at me, she was yelling at fucking everybody.
Right.
And
But at
and
first, all you hear is, she's
yeah,
yelling at me. Yeah.
yes. And I was like, "Oh, she's just upset today." And that just happens sometimes. And
Right.
I'm just scared. So I took it personally.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, that was a fun experience though. That was like one of the cooler ones that I had at the time. And then looking back also, it was a really cool show to be on.
I loved being on the Tick. It was, so clever and insightful, but had a big heart,
Yeah,
and was really, really funny, and playing with genres, and genres that I love to begin with. And it was this really fascinating mix of people involved, uh and the writing and the characters and everything was just really, it was unique, and it was interesting, and it had great things to say, kind of subversive things to say. And I loved being a part of it. I was so sad when I got
yeah.
burnt
When
to
you
a
got
crisp.
oh yeah,
But I always felt like, especially in that world, that didn't have to be the end. And there was some discussion about Ramsey's kind of coming back at some point later on, until it was killed by Amazon. But the person
I
who killed it
know.
is gone now, so who knows?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, anything could happen at any time in the
Yeah,
magic of TV land. But I mean, there you could have been brought back to life. Like there was no real reason that you couldn't have. And they were talking about it. I remember them being like, he'll come back as like a mummy or something, and
right. All
or
bandaged
like
up.
yeah, or something like that.
Yeah,
And I was like, yeah, that'd be funny. That'd be really funny if he came back to
yeah,
like to take back the gang would
right,
be
right.
hilarious.
Ramses 5.
Ramses 5, the mummying.
Yeah. I've had that, and it also happened in Gotham, because I was shot in the face, but we already knew that I had some kind of titanium exoskeleton that meant that I could change my face into different people. So I thought, well, then maybe it didn't actually kill me. And also
Yeah.
on that show, they had this like pool that they could just dump you in anytime and bring you back to life. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, they had the Lazarus pit, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, I figured just waiting for the call. And
wait
actually,
for the fake call,
now
yeah.
that I think about it, it also happened in Ant-Man and Wasp, because I get in I get blown up in the quantum machine explosion,
Yeah,
but in the comics, that's when he becomes Egghead later on.
right, yeah,
So I'm basically sitting by the phone waiting
just
for,
waiting.
for the Tick or Gotham or Marvel to call me and say, now's the moment.
It's time. You're coming back.
Right.
Well, yeah, so Marvel, you're not allowed to tell anyone that you're in it.
Right.
So when I saw it in the theater, I literally was just screaming at the movie screen because I was like, "That's Marvel! That's Marvel!" And no one cared because,
Right. Yeah.
but
That's
because I was
that's that's been my
on Long
experience so
Island.
much in my life.
Yeah, no, but they're like, "Shut up, man, shut up!" I want to watch the movie, and I was like, "I know him. He's in Marvel," and then you exploded, and I was like, "Oh boy."
Yeah. Well, short-lived. But,
Sure.
not only are you not allowed to tell people that you're doing it, I didn't even know what I had been hired to do until I got there.
Oh,
I had auditioned for a bunch of different Marvel shows, like, in a short period of time, and then I just got this call. I didn't get any of the ones that I auditioned for, and then I got this call asking if I would wanna come do this film. So I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And I knew it was I knew it was Ant-Man, but that's all I knew. They didn't tell me what the character was even. So my agents and I went like scouring through the Ant-Man catalog and trying to figure out, what it could be. And we did kind of land on, well, there is this character, Egghead, that, would make sense. And that's what it turned out to be. But I didn't know until I was there doing fittings and stuff like the day before I was supposed to shoot. I still hadn't even been given a script or anything,
yeah, they like
um,
secretive.
until I was about to shoot. So, um,
Oh, so you
and
didn't even know, like, how long you were gonna be having work for?
I think they must have told me how long I was going to be there for. It was in Atlanta. And I was there for a couple weeks because we shot a bunch more than ended up in the film. It was supposed to be the opening of the film, actually, this whole chase scene,
Oh,
um, at the very top of the film, taking place back in 1983 or whatever, with young Michelle Pfeiffer, uh, and it was, yeah, I think it was supposed to take place in Buenos Aires. Um, and there was
huh,
this whole like chase scene and going through this market and all these like hundreds of stunt people. We filmed it all in Savannah, Georgia, and and Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer and their younger doubles were all there, and we did this whole thing. And then I ran back to that warehouse where the whole explosion thing happens. But that there was a whole battle scene there that ended up cut as well.
that's
I
it's
kept hoping that like it would show up in a DVD extras or something, but
uh,
uh, yeah. So I was there for several weeks. So I didn't know how much of a thing it was going to be. So,
it's so weird what they choose to, like, cut down or what they choose to keep because 'cause they're constantly they're just like they shoot tons and tons of shit, and then they're just like, "I guess we'll just take this and this and make this."
yeah, yeah,
So,
and
well,
I mean, I understand the editing process and the refining process, and you sort of figure these things out. It's just like it's a lot of money to spend on a thing that you're never going to see. But
it doesn't cost as much in Georgia, right? Because it's a right to work state, so you can
well, that may be true, yeah. But
yeah,
it's still like I've been involved in big things before. Gotham was a huge production, and a lot of stuff, but I have never been involved with something on the scale of a Marvel superhero film. Like,
Oh, yeah, well,
that's just
it's
like
hundreds of millions of dollars, right? It's crazy.
armies of people and gear and trucks and stuff. It was pretty amazing just to be around.
It's,
And as a comics kid, I was in heaven. So
well, I mean, that's great. I mean, you've managed to do quite a bit of it. So that must feel really cool. Like you're the Tick, you're in Gotham, you're in that. Is Circus del Freak, is that
Freak.
based on a comic book?
Is that one?
Is that based off of a comic
It's
book also?
it's not a comic. It's a young adult series of novels. I think it was like 12 books.
Okay.
Um, and I think the whole collection is called Cirque du Freak.
Okay.
And it was originally supposed to be 3 films. They're going to do like uh, 4 books kind of with each film. Um, and which would have been cool because my character, Mr. Tiny, becomes more and more a bigger and more central figure as the books go along. And that was the plan originally, was to do a trilogy, but I think it was a weird thing. It was, written for younger adults and was really popular at the time. And by the time they made the film, the kids who had read it, who had grown up reading it, were now like in college. Um, and so they kind of couldn't decide whether they wanted to aim it for the age of the kids who usually read the book, which is more like, young high school sort of, um, or for the kids who knew the book and loved it already, which would make it more, kind of 20 somethings.
Yeah.
And they sort of aimed for, in the end, I think they aimed for something in the middle that ended up sort of satisfying neither end, because the
No
older
one.
kids were like, well, if it's cool for my younger brother, it's not going to be cool for me.
Right.
And the younger kids were like, I don't even know what this is. And so it was a shame because it was a fantastic cast. It was a terrific story. I mean, a sideshow freak show run by a bunch of vampires, like how can that not be interesting? And it had a great
Yeah.
cast, and it's what brought me down here to New Orleans, actually, because we shot it down here, and I was wearing this fat suit to make me look 400 pounds and prosthetics basically from my eyebrows down,
Yeah.
um,
You look
in
crazy in that.
in summer in New Orleans. So that was an interesting introduction to Louisiana summers.
And then and now you're there, right?
And now I'm here.
That's
Yeah.
where you live. Yeah. Well, so I mean, you where? So let's go back. Let's go
Okay.
back because I like to just hop around because I'm crazy in the brain. But so how did you know that this is what you wanted to be doing? Art, music, acting. You like what was your inciting moment?
Well, I had grown up around it because my father and mother were both in the arts. They had met as students at Juilliard. He was a piano student and she was a modern dance student. And so we moved around a bunch when I was little, but I mostly grew up in West Virginia. And my dad was teaching at Marshall University. And often when the university needed a little kid for the productions, um, I was the little kid. And so my first times on stage were because of that. And then my dad would also do community theater stuff, and the whole family got involved, my brother and sister and I. Um, and it was just something that was kind of always around us. And my parents certainly weren't encouraging me or pushing me to go into the arts, or my brother or sister either. Um, but when we showed any interest, they, immediately kind of picked up on it. Um, but I kind of learned simultaneously how terrific the arts were and how exciting and how much it could mean to a person. But also at the same time was learning a really healthy regard for how hard it is to have a professional career,
Yeah, it's one of the
because
hardest.
my dad and mom have both chosen not to pursue performing careers. My dad went into academia. My mom also taught for a long time. Um, so so it wasn't, I didn't think I was going to do that for my life necessarily, for my career. So when it was time to look at colleges and stuff, I'd been doing a lot of theater. So I wanted to continue exploring that, but I didn't want to go to a conservatory where that's all I was going to do.
Okay.
Um, so I ended up going to a liberal arts college that, had a bunch of other things too. And so I studied all kinds of things in addition to theater. And uh, and even by the time I graduated, I just felt like, well, I've explored lots of other things that I have been interested in. There's nothing that I am more interested in than theater and music. Um, there's nothing I seem to have more of an aptitude for than those things. So I guess I'll just go to New York and see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll, maybe go back to school or pursue one of those other things I was interested in. And through my life and career since then, every time I was maybe on the verge of thinking, you know what, maybe this is just not working out and I should do something else, I would get some kind of job that was just enough to help me scrape by and keep at it. But it was
Yeah.
the longest time before I could say, I am an actor and a musician, and that's what I do, and that's what my career is.
Yeah,
But in
it
a
takes a
way,
long time. It takes a long, long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
In some ways, I think the moment that I kind of realized it, um, even though I didn't acknowledge it for a long time, was when I went to a boarding school for my last 2 years of high school, and uh, and it was really intense, high level boarding school, um, and I really struggled and floundered around a lot in the beginning because I wasn't used to that kind of academic rigor, and I was away from home for the first time for any length of time, and everybody there seemed to be so driven and so smart, and I just felt like this hick from West Virginia. And then I auditioned for the first school play that year, which was Comedy of Errors, and I remember to this day standing on that stage in this black box theater, and it was the first place in the couple months that I had been there that I felt any sense of being at home, because I recognized how this world works,
Yeah.
on this side of the footlights and that side. And I wasn't the greatest actor there by any means, but I understood how this worked, and I just felt comfortable and at home for the first time on that campus there. And in a way, that's kind of been true ever since. Especially as I move around so much and everything else. There's a kind of belonging that I feel on stage that is unlike, and it, it also happens in front of the camera on a set. It's I it would probably take me a long time to really describe what that is, but it
Yeah.
just kind of seems to be true for me.
No, I mean, I totally get that, and it's a thing that I feel too, where like home is everywhere as long as you're able to do your work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also the people that you are working with are your family, not all the time, but they understand more about this than anyone else in your life ever will, right? So it becomes a thing where they understand you in a way that no one else that isn't in this industry can. Um,
I think that's true. I think you can also uh, get misled into thinking that um, that's all there is sometimes, because
right.
it is going to change. The job's going to end. People are going to go away. Your best friends are suddenly going to
Be
be
somewhere else.
somebody
Yeah.
else's best friends.
Right.
And you've been really smart and fortunate, and are raising a family and have figured out the kind of work life balance or juggling act, maybe better than I have. So, I'm still learning, still working on it.
I mean, I'm still learning too. I mean, I have 2 kids and I'm married but like, you know, there's the fear that your work's going to suffer or you're not going to have enough time or the like other like myriad of reasons why people don't start a family or they don't do other stuff. And it's only enriched my work and made my
Right.
work better, and has made me a better artist. I mean, I remember when I
Sure.
was yeah, like when I was in school, uh, my acting teachers would always say like, you need to live life, you need to go have a life, you need to go to, and you need to do other things outside of the theater. You need to go to the symphony. You need to go to the movies. You need to go to the art museum. You like need to read books. Like you need to consume life, take it in and process it. And I remember one of the things that pissed me off the most was particularly with like me, being you know being a character actor and such. I'm sure you feel the same way, but I was told like you're not going to really start working heavily until you're in your like mid 30s, like late 30s. And I was like, fuck you, I'm good, I can work right now. And it turns out they were right.
Right.
So um because as character actors, like I mean, I've been playing people's fathers since I was 17, right? So um
Yeah.
and it seems like um certainly there are roles for our archetypes of folks, like like you're in Mind Hunter, you got a huge role in that, you got a huge role in the Gilded Age, you got a huge role in the Tick, right? But in the beginning, it seems like you get smaller roles that then turn into something bigger down the line. Like at least that's how it's been for me. And I mean, I remember you telling a story about specifically Fringe, about how you started off kind of like you weren't sure if you were going to be there for a while, and then all of a sudden you were in the whole fucking thing.
Yeah, that was a really interesting and unusual situation. I had auditioned for the part with a scene and dialogue that never ended up appearing in the show, and I don't know if they just wrote it as a dummy scene for people to audition with, or whether at one time they thought that scene was going to be in it. Um, but it was a scene about September was like in an operating room, and they bring him in and they open him up and he's got like 2 hearts and two of everything. So it was definitely like something that was kind of connected to where they were headed with the story. But um, so I auditioned, I got the part, and then I got a call from the producers saying, okay, we really excited to have you on board, but here's what we want to do. We want you to be in every episode of the first season, but only for like a few seconds, and you won't be any focus on you, and you'll just be in the background of scenes. And little by little, we want more and more of the audience to catch on to the fact that there's this odd character there all the time, and it's not explained, and we don't kind of get it, and it's there for the really keen observers in the audience. Um, and our hope is that by the end of the first season, you'll be on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, and who is this character? What is what is going on Fringe? Um, but they said, it's going to feel like a weird job because you're just going to be working for a little bit per episode. And I'm like, that sounds great to me. And, as long as I'm still getting paid, sure. Um, and then, so that's how it started. But then after a couple of episodes, the network went to the producers and said, we like this character too much, and we want to move the reveal up some.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah.
so that's what happened. Then they wrote The Arrival, and the 4th episode was the one with the famous hot sauce episode, where people saw who September was. But then
Yeah.
I went back to just doing some of those drive-by things for a long time, and I loved it. But they did say at the beginning, they said, we plan to have this character you'll be with us until the end of the series if you want to, do it that long.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. Oh, I didn't know
um,
that. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
and they said, we have a major, uh, he's a integral part of the story that we're telling. And it turned out, they will say that to you sometimes, and you're like, yeah, that whatever happened with that.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was true. I mean, in the end, I ended up saving the universe, so that was kind of cool.
It was a cool arc. It was cool to see. Oh, one of my favorite things on that show is like when we got to see where he lived, like when we got to go to his like house.
And Donald, when he becomes Donald later,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is
I
cool.
love that with the poster of "Singing in the Rain" with the Donald O'Connor thing, and that's where he got his name. And yeah, I love that.
Okay,
How
so
about
yeah,
you?
I mean, because with me on the tick, I was supposed to explode after three
Right, I
episodes.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah, and then all of a
you
sudden
were
I,
just you
I
were just too good and too
they
fun.
they like me, they love me, and they just
Yeah.
kept me on. So it turns out, even though I was getting yelled at, I was doing a good job.
See?
Yeah, which was cool.
Yeah.
But maybe it is just what they were saying in school because now I'm auditioning for things that are very big, which is great. And I'm about to be 40, so they were probably right, even though I was very upset. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's such an interesting thing that you said before that, like so it wasn't like an insatiable need. Like you were like, let me try this out, and if it doesn't work, then I'm gonna do something else.
Yeah, I have never been that kind of actor who was like, God, all I want to do is act, and
I feel what
everything
you're
I'm doing is geared for that. And I want to star in a Broadway show, and I want to get a Tony Award, and I want to get an Oscar, and all that stuff. Um, I I actually had a teacher in a summer program at North Carolina School of the Arts tell me once, "You'll never be successful as an actor because you're just not ambitious enough."
okay.
And I kind of thought, well, yeah, if that's what's required, maybe you're right, because I'm not sure that I, am that ambitious. I've never felt super ambitious, and I, in fact, get uneasy when I'm around hyper ambitious people, especially in show business.
Mm.
I kind of steer clear of those types of people, and um, but I clearly have some ambition because I wouldn't work so hard, I don't think, otherwise.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think
I was
some
never that kind of, you know, gotta
it
gotta
had
do
to
it kind of actor.
calmed you down in the room. Like, having that type of mindset, like, when you were auditioning, it had to make you just calmer than everybody else.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it did. I certainly never felt calm. I just hate auditioning
Yeah,
so much, and I feel like I get hired in spite of my auditions most times. Um, I've always kind of felt like the way you should get hired is you work, you do something, people see you do it, they think you're good, and they want you to do something else. Um,
that's not
and the
usually how it works.
audition process is a struggle for me, even though it's now morphed into this self-taping world, which has its benefits and disadvantages. But I don't think I come across as well in a self-tape as I do in the room. I think I just give a better accounting of myself when I can show up and try to show them that I'm a person that they would like to collaborate with. When it's just show me what your guess is about this character, I feel like,
I
I'll
do
try.
miss the whole yeah, because, like, I feel, about this too, about me, is that my personality in the room helps me book. And
Yeah.
yes, like, we know most of the casting directors that we know, and they know us, but um there's that human part of it that's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm told by people that they can tell from your slate how you are as a person. Like it depends on how you slate. But I'm like, that's not that, you know, like,
Then
like
no wonder I keep not getting jobs from slates, because my slates, I think, look like, a mugshot, or like I'm being held at an undisclosed location and forced to tell people my height
yeah,
and
your
where I
name,
am.
where you
Like
live.
if that's true, if the slate is really that important, I think no wonder, because I think I just look pissed off that I have to do this most
You
of
have
the time in
slate.
my
Yeah,
slate.
well, because you could just put it in the email, like, or like in the submission, just like how,
Yeah,
like, but I mean, like, also, I'm much larger in life than I am on screen. So when I come into the office, like, I make a bigger impression because, like, oh shit, like you are 6'2" and you
right,
have big muscles that we didn't see before, and because, like, I'm not going to be on tape like wearing like a tight shirt, like always flexing,
right,
right? Like
right,
I'm not like a dick, like I'm not
right,
gonna do that. But I make in person, I make an impression.
right.
And not that I don't do great work, and I'm sure you're doing great work also. It's just I miss being in person.
Yeah.
I do like doing tape because I have kids and I don't have to go into the city as much.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it means that I can live in New Orleans and still audition for everything that I would if I was in New York, so that is a definite benefit.
so a lot of theater in your life, tons of it. Or a lot of really cool theater, like Tommy and Assassins is one of my favorite fucking shows.
Mhm.
And it's also one of the like grittiest musicals I've ever seen, which is really great.
Yeah,
Um, and then you were just in Tammy Faye,
yeah.
and it got fucking canceled, and no one seems to know why. Do you know why?
No, I mean, first of all, when you said it was canceled, that sounds like a different kind of thing.
Yeah,
It just was closed.
it was closed. Yeah,
Yeah,
not canceled.
not
Sorry,
canceled,
it's
canceled.
like
Yeah,
TV is
yeah,
in my brain. It
yeah,
it closed, and
yeah.
it closed a lot
I
earlier than it was supposed to.
Yes, I mean, I was supposed to be doing it now still.
Yeah,
Um, I can point to a number of things that I think had something to do with it, but I don't know that any one of those things is why exactly. Um, I do know that it felt like um, uh, it felt personal at first, like they hated us, they hated the show, they hated, I didn't read any of the reviews, so I don't know exactly what was said, but you get the gist of it from people anyway. And a lot of them seem to take exception at the fact that it was a British team largely that had created this show about an American story. Um, I think part of it had to do with the fact that we opened right the week after the election,
yeah.
and everybody was in such a traumatized kind of state, which they still are.
Mhm.
Um, and our show was, one of the things that it was very much about was about the origins of the religious right and Christian nationalism, and the way that it used entertainment to as a wedge into the government, and essentially laid the groundwork for where we are today. So in my way of thinking, that's like exactly the kind of thing you would want to be doing right now. But a lot of people, including a lot of very progressive liberal people, were like, "Oh, I just can't, I just can't
I
bring
can't
myself
handle it right
to,
now, yeah.
which was funny because most of my Southern friends who came up to see it were like, I was raised on this stuff, and I thought maybe I was going to be kind of triggered and traumatized by it, but actually it was um, such a helpful thing to be able to watch this story and see some of these guys getting their comeuppance, as happens to so many of the ministers, the Falwells and the Swaggarts and all those guys, and to also see a person in the middle of it, in the person of Tammy Faye, who uh, was actually, despite her faults, and there were plenty of them, but did live up to the actual foundations of Christianity in terms of truly being a place for everyone, and finding ways to be inclusive and supportive of all kinds of people, especially the gay community in Tammy Faye's case. Um, so a lot of people felt like, no, this is actually a great message, that even in these darkest of times that we've been through before and came out of, there were people inside who were resisting and fighting against that. But that wasn't the message that critics took from it, and they
Yeah.
were snarky and dismissive, and I feel missed the point for the most part. But then, so it felt kind of personal for a while, but then the Avett Brothers musical, Swept Away, opened the week after us, got rave reviews, and still closed the week after we did. So ran about the
Well,
same amount of time. And so that made me feel like this is more of an indictment of the current state of Broadway than, these individual shows. And, and producing patterns. Like I think everyone now can see that we were in far too big a house, where we had to be a huge hit from day one and didn't have time to build an audience. Maybe they thought Elton John's name being on it was going to guarantee it, like Lion King audiences from the first day.
yeah.
That turned out not to happen. So, I don't know. People say they want to see new musicals and they want new stuff, but then you got to support it. But then you also have to make it affordable. And
Right, which is
when
very
you,
hard right
yeah,
now.
when
Um,
you're having to pay $900 to go see Othello, I don't know.
yeah, I'm not going to go see that Othello. I'm just not.
Honestly, I don't see much at all because I genuinely can't afford to see most of the things in my profession,
I
which is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I have not been able to pay for a Broadway show of any capacity that wasn't on some kind of like discounted site or like app or whatever in a very
Right.
long time. I mean, like, I have not seen a show have like a mezzanine seat for like under $300 since I was probably in college.
Yeah.
It has become a thing that where it's like, I don't know, was it Hamilton? Did Hamilton do that? Like,
Well, Hamilton had a lot to do with it because that, the event status of that changed the calculations of stuff, I think,
right,
and changed public perceptions of it and producers' perceptions of what they could get away with. But um, yeah, I do think. I mean, the producers. I remember years and years ago, that was the first time the ticket prices had gone over. I don't know, maybe $200 or something, and people were outraged and said,
yeah, how are we
how is
supposed to
that
afford this?
possible?
Yeah,
But yeah, Hamilton was the kind of phenomenal across the board success that did change the landscape, but not necessarily for the benefit of the art form.
right. It right. It became, I mean, it's a great show and it deserves
Yeah,
all the hype and all the money, but to weigh every other show against a show like that, it's just not feasible.
yeah,
So we'll see what happens. Like, I
yeah.
mean, there's got to be a turn again, just because um, the same 100 people can't see every show, right? Because that's
Right.
just, yeah, that's just how it. You got to make it. You got to make it accessible. And how do you do that? I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't know. That's why I'm not a producer.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm not a Broadway producer. I mean, there's not even like one producer anymore. There's like 80 of them per show.
Right.
So it's producer by committee. So it's not even like, yeah. So it's yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Anyway,
so yeah, so I really want to talk about Tommy a little bit.
sure.
So I remember I was first exposed to Tommy because of the movie. Um, but you originated the role, right?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. First at La Jolla Playhouse, where it premiered, and then again on Broadway. And then again, I did the first European company in Germany.
It's
So yeah, I
so
mean,
you work with the group.
Roger Daltrey would argue that he originated it, which I think is correct.
He's correct. Yeah.
But as far as the Broadway musical, yeah, that was me.
How did it change and morph from its original iteration to where it is today? Like, I'm sure it did a lot, but I mean,
It's interesting. It didn't really. I mean, compared to the revival that just happened, there were some attempts to uh, update it, but they weren't really. They didn't change that much of it, uh, which I think was maybe a
error.
missed opportunity. Yeah, I would have loved to see some young director who maybe never even saw the original one just go back to the source material and reinvent it truly for today. I think that would have been really exciting. Um, but as far as our production, the script, that there were changes made between La Jolla and Broadway. There was a new song written for the parents, and a lot of the changes really were more just to accommodate a bigger budget and more spectacle.
Mm,
The script and the score and stuff didn't change very much from the first day of rehearsal till opening night on Broadway, which is very unusual. But it also speaks to how thoroughly Des McAnuff and Pete Townsend worked on that script and score before it got to us. So they'd really kind of answered a lot of the questions that, and you did have source material in terms of the music
right.
that had existed for a long time. Um, but that's really rare especially in a new musical, for it to change so little over its course. I mean, Tammy Faye changed so much from our first day of rehearsal, and there'd already been a production in London, and they had refined it some, but we did a huge amount of work when we started here. Titanic was another experience that I had, that whole scenes and characters were added or taken out, and um, all kinds of stuff. But Tommy really was kind of like one straight line from the beginning to opening night. Um,
That's really interesting. I did not expect that at all.
yeah,
Not yeah.
yeah, and that was my first Broadway experience, and so I didn't realize that wasn't how it usually went
How it usually goes.
until I until I got into Titanic, and then I discovered, oh, this is how it actually goes.
It's all a clusterfuck till it opens. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we I think we canceled our first preview in La Jolla because the tech took forever.
Well, I'm sure
The
there's a lot of stuff
technical
going
stuff
on in that.
was super
Yeah.
complicated. Um, so our first run through of the show in costume with all the elements was in front of a live audience. Um, so in that way, yeah, we were scrambling and fixing and refining things, but we weren't like rewriting songs or the story or any of that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, like, I don't know if people say this, but I kind of say it that like it was like one of the first like jukebox musicals, even though it's not at all. Like people tried to like copy that type of thing over and over again, but
Yeah.
they didn't realize, or they did, or they chose not to, that it wasn't like that. It was its own thing that was really special. It had nothing to do with just the songs, which is what it turned into after a while. Not this show, but this type of show
Yeah.
moving forward.
I mean, I
Uh,
don't know if I would call it a jukebox musical. For me, that term is more like, you have the songs of, a
Billy
recording
Joel,
artist, yeah,
yeah,
Billy Joel or Bruce Springsteen or whatever. And so you take songs that were written to say different things or tell different stories, and you build a story around them to try to tell a story that wasn't necessarily the story in those songs. With Tommy, some of that is kind of true. Like Pinball Wizard was a song Pete had written, you know, that was in a drawer that he had written before he even thought of it. But Tommy was kind of designed from the beginning to have a story and to tell a story. Now, what that story was changed a lot, and was also very, uh, when you're writing a rock album, you don't have to answer a lot of questions that you have to answer in the
When you're
theater.
making a play, yeah.
And my favorite story is that when they were recording, I think Rolling Stone was doing an interview with Pete Townsend, and they asked him what the story of the record was, and he like told them the story. And but there were a lot of drugs and mind altering things involved in that time. And so when they went back, when they finally arrived at the time to sequence the record in terms of like what song comes after what in order to tell the story, because they recorded everything out of sequence, um, Pete couldn't remember what he said the story was, and he went back to this article to see what he had said, what he told this reporter the story
Oh,
was, so they could figure out what it was supposed to be. And when you listen to it, or when certainly when you watch the Ken Russell movie, which was like probably more about Ken Russell than about the Who, um, you can believe that that's true. And I think the thing that Des did so brilliantly was to sit Pete down and say, okay, we have to answer some of these things, and we have to decide what the story is that we're telling, and then we have to figure out how best to do that using these songs, which is a different thing from what you're talking about. And what I think you're right, that this it opened the door. I mean, there had been rock and roll on Broadway before, like a version of rock and roll in Hair or Jesus Christ Superstar and that kind of stuff, but there hadn't been real, honest to God,
rock and roll.
written for rock stages music
Right.
on Broadway before. And this kind of opened the door, and suddenly you got Paul Simon doing Cape Man, and you got Elton John doing Aida, I think was his first thing. um, and and those were even, they were doing a similar thing. They were writing new music for the theater, um, which is different than Good Vibrations, the Beach Boys musical, and it's
Yeah.
just like a bunch of catalog songs tried to tie together as a story. And
Usually through a lot of dancing.
yeah, exactly. And
Tons of dancing.
a lot of willing or unwilling suspension of disbelief.
Yes. So, all right, I'm gonna move it back to TV land for a moment. Mindhunter, man. So, an awesome show, a fucking phenomenon of a show that everyone wouldn't stop talking about. And your role on season 2 was incredibly fun. And then David Fincher was just like, I don't want it anymore, and just stopped doing it.
Yeah, I didn't get a phone call. I didn't get an email from Fincher telling me exactly what his thinking was behind everything. Um, I'm not sure if anybody did, but what I understood was he he was supposed to do this movie with Brad Pitt, this World War Z 2 or something.
Okay.
And so that was suddenly going to happen again. Wasn't going to happen, and then suddenly it was going to happen. And he needed to go do that. And they talked for a while about him stepping away and sort of executive producing, but not being as hands-on and directing as much as he had been. And everybody kind of agreed, well, it just wouldn't work, because he was so hands-on. Even with the episodes he didn't direct, he was always there in Pittsburgh, and he was seeing dailies, and he was prepping the directors and everything else. So I think everybody agreed that they couldn't really do it without him being there. So they were trying to figure out, can we just pause for the length of time to do that, and pick it up 6 months later or a year later. And then that movie ended up falling through but they'd already sort of put us on hold. And then he wanted to do Mank, the script that his father had written,
Yeah.
and really, that was really important to him. So that's sort of how everything got stopped, and then it just never. Then I think some of the management at Netflix changed, and I was told that we were like the most expensive show on Netflix at the time, which is crazy because there were no like car chases or outer space scenes and stuff. But we did take like nearly a month to shoot an episode
Oh, well, because of the amount
because
of time that it takes. Yeah.
all the stories about the 30 to 50 takes are not exaggerations.
Yeah.
Um, so, and the result is is on film for you to see. But so yeah, and there's some talk that maybe they wanted to move it out to Los Angeles, that it was, after a few years, it was hard for him and his wife to live in Pittsburgh all the time, even though they really seemed to love the city and were big champions of shooting there and of being there. But it was a real disappointment, and there was a hope at the time that maybe they were just going to kind of give it a couple years and pick it up closer to the time of the BTK killers, the opening sequence stuff, and also because after the Atlanta child murders, the next sort of big thing they worked on was out west, was in California. So a lot of those things kind of made sense, and you could sort of stop and pick them up. The actors will have aged, and the story will have aged and stuff. But I have heard, like you were saying, rumors again. There have been rumors forever,
Yeah.
but there were apparently more convincing kind of rumors more recently. It sounded to me like maybe it was going to be a film or like a limited series kind of thing, and again, this is me just like, I have no actual information at all, but maybe it would be just Jonathan and Holt and a new cast of other people, and it would be them following BTK, I think, out in California. But that's, my character could still be in, because my character was not a real person. He was an amalgam of several different real characters. So, they could involve him or not. I certainly would hope that they would, but there's no telling.
Yes, because we want that work back. Yeah.
But the more I was always kind of in DC, and the more they weren't in DC, the harder it would be to need my character so much.
Well, you could be like, I'm coming up. I'm gonna be in the field to make sure you're not fucking it up.
I hope that you're on the writing staff.
Me too. All right. So the last thing, because we're about to hit an hour with you, and I don't like to keep people longer than an hour. But Loose Cattle is your current band, and they're awesome. Like I've managed to like hear a bunch of your stuff over the years, and like now more that I've been prepping for this interview. How did how'd that get started? You have a really cool band.
Yeah, I love this band, and I've done music as long as I've done acting. As an actor, I've somehow managed to make a living most of the time, and as a musician, I mostly lose money, which is how I know I'm a real musician. But this band has been together for about, I think we started around 2011. And it was my bandmate Kimberly Kay and I started the band in New York with a bunch of our friends, and then I did Cirque du Freak, which brought me down here in oh gosh, no, that must have been, so I came down here in 2007. I guess it was after that, a while after that. Well, I was still coming back and forth a lot to New Orleans, but I hadn't moved down here. So we started the band in New York with a bunch of friends. And then eventually when Kimberly got married and moved down here. I had, been here for a while and had a place down here. And so we just couldn't afford to constantly be bringing the guys from New York down. So we found some New Orleans players who turned out to be the rhythm section is this. They've been together for 40 years playing with different bands.
Oh wow.
Everyone from Alex Chilton to their current other band called the Iguanas, and all kinds of people. And then Rurik Noonan, this kind of prodigy fiddle player and singer. And so that's become the real kernel of the band now for about, I don't know, 5-6 years maybe. And we've done kind of everything backwards. Our first album was a live album of stuff that we recorded in New York at a residency at 54 Below. Our second album was a holiday album, and our third album was our first studio album, which was still kind of half covers and half originals. And our most recent record, Someone's Monster, that came out on Single Lock Records, this great record label from Muscle Shoals, is that feels like a real turning point, I think, in the band's development. And it was produced by this guy John Agnello, who produced Dinosaur Jr. and a bunch of Sunvolt things, a lot of Americana bands, and we have guest appearances from Lucinda Williams and Patterson Hood from the Drive-By Truckers. So it's like, I'm really proud of it, and we're having a great time. We're about to play Jazz Fest down here and French Quarter Fest, and we're playing on Mountain Stage, NPR program in September in West Virginia, and looking for ways to tour and figure out ways to make that financially feasible, which it really isn't, but
it's hard. Yeah. I was in a band very, very briefly, and one of the hardest things to do was to just like find ways to pay for like where you're gonna live and how you're gonna eat. Like like you don't make like unless you sell a lot of merch, like you're not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, I hope it works.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of fun. It's great music.
Thanks.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, hope people check it out.
Well, you can, because it's linked under all of these videos everywhere that you are watching it.
That's fantastic.
So whoever's watching now or later, you can hear the band, and if you want to check out the band's Instagram, it's also linked, and if you want to check out Michael's Instagram, that is also linked too. You can check out everything.
We have a bunch of really cool videos that we made for the songs on this most recent record too, that are all up on our YouTube channel. So that's another place to go look.
Cool. That's so awesome. Well, Michael, it has been a whole ass hour, and
it passed in an instant.
It did. And I had so much I wanted to talk to you about, but maybe some other time. Part two, Josh and Michael, live. Well, thanks, man. And I really appreciate you being here, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you again, Josh.
Great to see you too, man. All right. Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this evening. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're watching on TikTok, thank you so much for being here. TikTok is still new to me, so I appreciate everybody that was watching. My Instagram folks, thank you as always for being here. You are now 24,000 strong, and you make me feel special every single day. And if you're watching on Facebook, thank you for watching, and please share the video. That is the end of this week's live stream live, and I'll see you next week. Have yourself a magical week. And now I have